Hey, what up everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today. This is me counting down my top 5 United States heavyweight champions. Right now, the United States Championship is on Kalisto. And he started trading the championship back and forth with Alberto Del Rio. And honestly, since, Cena's not in the title hunt as of right now because of his injury, it doesn't really seem like the championship really means anything as of right now. I can definitely tell they're trying to put the championship on Kalisto, trying to make him turn him into something. But with Sin Cara coming back with his injury, he's immediately being put right back into a tag team feud, and it sort of seems like the Lucha Dragons means more than Kalisto means to the United States Championship. So more than likely, somewhere soon, Del Rio is going to get that title back, and we'll be going into a different sort of feud with that. But looking back over the title, there's been times that this belt really meant something. I picked my 5 favorite WCW and WWE. I used all of the title frames of this basically in 1975. The Mid-Atlantic division ended up being led by Crockett. They ended up bringing in, this is their sort of like their main championship as the NWA World Heavyweight title that was made famous by Ric Flair at the time, was being, paraded around the company. This is the belt that would be fought when Ric Flair wasn't able to be on the shows. Harley Race ended up being their first United States Heavyweight Champion. From then, the title was brought into WCW, and Ted Turner bought it. In 1991, they really started branding it as the WCW United States Heavyweight title, where it was used as the number 2 belt in the company. But they always sort of made it where this title really meant something. But in the dying days of WCW, this title sort of faded into obscurity, with a lot of mid-carders trading the championship back and forth and never really being involved in any feuds that really meant anything. In 2001, during the invasion, the WCW United States title was brought in, where Booker T was the double champion. On the last show, he ended up beating Scott Steiner to be going out as the World Heavyweight Champion as well as the United States Champion, and ended up giving it to DDP's buddy Canyon, and the title, took on a life of its own there. But at the Survivor Series show in 2001, ended up being Edge versus Test to sort of merge the 2 belts together. Edge ended up coming out the winner, becoming the new Intercontinental Champion, and the United States title was sort of thrown to the side. In 2003, part of SmackDown, Stephanie McMahon brought back the title in a tournament, which came down to a final with Eddie Guerrero beating Chris Benoit to become SmackDown's WCW World Heavyweight Championship. They still kept all of the title frames that went along with all of the years. So it's sort of like they just brought the new tradition to WWE. Number 5 on my list is Matt Hardy. And I don't think a lot of people really think of Matt Hardy as being one of the best United States champions, but I was a big Matt Hardy fan. And when Matt Hardy was doing the MVP feud, it really felt like it was something really special, and it was something that was really funny. A lot of it had to be sort of brought up on the fly because I believe it was Matt Hardy that had an injury, and then when Matt Hardy was able to come back and he was going to be ready to go, MVP ended up suffering an injury. So this feud, even though these guys weren't wrestling, WWF didn't want to give up on them and kept going with them back and forth. And when Matt Hardy won the United States Championship, it really felt like, as a fan, somebody that, was following this guy on MySpace. I don't think he'd started the YouTube gimmick at the time, but he was like a fans wrestler, where, when he won the United States title, it really felt like I won the United States title. It felt like, one of the good guys had really, passed through, and, it was moving up the card as a single wrestler, and something that really meant something. At this time, I don't believe Jeff Hardy was involved in the company. He might have been wrestling for TNA at the time, and Matt was sort of, out there on his own. It's sort of like the second favorite Hardy, but, to people that were watching WWE at the time, he really was, becoming a guy in his own. And I thought Matt Hardy winning the championship and having his reign made him number 5 on my list. Number 5, I went with a WCW legend, none other than Lex Luger. He would go on to hold the title for 5 reigns, and over these reigns, they would last 948 days. One of these reigns ended up lasting for over 523 days, almost 2 years as champion for Lex Luger. With the long reign, he was, a fixture of WCW. They were always trying to make this guy look really strong. Of course, Lex Luger would have his high points and his low points in wrestling. When you watch the old Nitros and the old WCW pay-per-views, Luger was always one of the most over guys. Of course, he, went to WWF and as the narcissist, and, he had his highs and lows there as well. He always seemed like he was a guy that was over, but never really seemed like he was a game changer, if that makes any sense. One of the biggest highlights of Lex Luger's career is winning a match via countout at SummerSlam over Yokozuna, where he did not win the championship, and then also just coming out and debuting in WCW on the first edition of Monday Nitro, setting the tone of what that was going to be. Number 3 on my list, I put this guy here, John Cena. And honestly, I put him on my list as being one of the greatest United States champion, not even really thinking about his last run, beating Rusev at WrestleMania 31, and then having the United States Open Challenge, where, when most guys are being faded out by the WWE, they don't tend to wrestle a lot. And John Cena ended up wrestling on Raw and on SmackDown each and every week, putting the United States Championship on the line. And even though he was wrestling guys that weren't really in his feud, he was wrestling guys like Stardust. I don't think he ever got the match against Slater, but he was wrestling against guys like Cesaro, Dean Ambrose, and getting to show, it was almost like an addition for these guys to be put into bigger and better feuds, having bigger and better matches, showing that really could deliver a main event match in WWE, and sort of getting them a lot of confidence, because a lot of these guys like Zack Ryder or Cody Rhodes, they've fallen into this rut where it seems like WWF doesn't want to put the machine behind them, but being able to pull out a big match like this really helped them out. But the reason why I put Cena on my list was going back to the year of 2004, of course, when John Cena would win the United States Championship from Big Show at WrestleMania 20 in the opening match. Within a year, he would turn around to win the World Heavyweight Championship from JBL at WrestleMania 21 in a really, really good match. But throughout the year of 2004, as he was pushing himself to go on to finish second in the Royal Rumble and then find a way to become the number 1 contender to go up against JBL, the United States title really was one of the main focuses of SmackDown, with him having the start of his run where he ended up being stripped of the championship and then having the real good run against Booker T with the Best of 5 series. Once he won the Best of 5 series, he would go on to have the feud against Carlito. During this time, he would be making the movie The Marine, and then going on and holding the championship all the way into the last SmackDown before WrestleMania, where he would drop the title due to a lot of outside interference due to the Bashams and JBL and the cabinet to Orlando Jordan. But he would go on to beat JBL and become the new champion and would never look back from that point. Number 2 on my list is sort of the guy that I put as the face of the United States title, at least the United States title that WWF rebranded in 2003 when they put that really beautiful American flag on there. I ended up going with Chris Benoit, and Chris Benoit was a guy who was a really great wrestler for WCW. He would always have this stigma over him where, even though he was so great and he was a member of the Four Horsemen, WCW would never put a title on him. He ended up winning the Tag Team Championship with Dean Malenko, and then once getting out of there, in 1999, was able to beat David Flair, who Ric Flair gave the United States Championship when he was either the commissioner or the president or something in WCW that didn't really mean anything. He would go on to be given the championship for a second time, only to hold it for 1 day, which ended up being a joke run. Scott Hall was injured and was supposed to have a match against Benoit, so they ended up, rebooking on the fly, giving Benoit the championship. He was going to have a match against Jeff Jarrett, and on an episode of Thunder before the pay-per-view, they ended up bringing in legends from the first WrestleMania with George the Animal Steele, Jimmy Snuka, and I can't remember who the third one was, but Benoit ended up getting injured coming off at the top of a cage, giving a flying headbutt. I think that Jimmy Snuka ended up coming off the top of the cage on the other side onto Jeff Jarrett. Both guys ended up receiving concussions, and the match was scrapped from the pay-per-view, and the title was stripped from Benoit, and that would be the last time he held it in WCW. He would go on to have great runs with this in WWE on SmackDown as well. Number one on the list would be Ric Flair, who held this championship for 6 times during his career. Over his run in WCW, I gave this number one look to Ric Flair because Ric Flair really was the man with the United States title. He always ended up, this was sort of like second banana in WCW. And even though Ric Flair was the face of WCW, when you think of it, he is the guy that really put them on the map and really carried them for years. Even though people call the franchise to Sting, I think without Ric Flair, there would be nothing for Sting to move into. And it didn't matter if Flair wasn't in the main event. He was going to be in the co-main event. That, United States title really was what put her over the top, and it was the reason why I gave him number one on this list. If you don't agree with it, make your own. Send me the video. I'll make sure I watch it as well as retweet it out there on Twitter. But these are my top 5 United States World Heavyweight Champions.